So this morning I'm going to talk about right now, we're going to talk about how's the market, right? And usually agents will respond with it's hot, it's crazy, it's good time to sell, homes are selling fast. But the problem with that is, number one, it doesn't mean really a whole hell of a lot to somebody. I'll give you an example. An agent one time, I was talking to an agent and I was explaining to them, that you have to have a little bit of statistic in your thing rather than saying it's hot, because that's really, it depends, right? We have labeled a seller's market as a good market and a buyer's market as a bad market. Well, it depends. If you're a buyer, it's not a great market. It's terrible. If you're a seller, yeah, you can sell quickly. However, if you have to buy something else, well, then it gets a little more challenging. So in a buyer's market, it's not good to be they say the market's bad. Well, it's bad if you're a seller, but it's great if you're a buyer. So there's no such thing as a good market or a bad market. There is a buyer's market and there's a seller's market, and then there's the shift between the two. So let's take, for example, so you need to come up with something that, rather than just saying subjective descriptions of the market, why not throw a stat at them? So here's how you do it. If you're using the WFR, you just go to statistics, go to sales per month, choose January, say 2018, Salt Lake County, and that's it, right? So we're just going to set, and then, we're not here to drill down and give them a CMA on their property, but if we look at, so the median sales price in January 2019 was $296. We scroll down, we can't count August. There's only 3 sales reported. Today's August 1st. And in July, I don't like to look at month-end statistics until about the 15th of the following month, because there's a lot of data that hasn't been reported yet. So let's go with June, right? So that's 347. So we're just going to do a simple calculation of, what was it, 296, right? So 296, so 296, we don't need to do the thousands. We're not going to do the exact thousand. 296,000 divided by 347,000, right? It's 85%. So that means the market improved. The prices improved 15,000 from January till June, right? So when someone says, how's the market? Your response is, prices have, the median price has risen 15% since January 2018, comma, why do you ask? So, and the reason why you want to do it that way is, one, it makes you sound intelligent, because everybody else gives the silly answers like it's hot, it's crazy, blah, 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 and which really doesn't mean anything, because you don't know what their motivation is. You don't know where they're at. So one agent one time asked, or when asked, he said it's a great time to sell. And then a buyer, the person a little bit deflated said, when is a good time to buy? So he had a buyer sitting in front of him, but he just kicked the legs out from underneath this guy's dream of buying a home just by that simple statement. So, and you don't need to know the stats on a daily basis. You can look this up quarterly. So, so how's the market? Well, prices are up 15% since January 2018. Why do you ask? I mean, you can even do it this year, right? So let's just scroll to January 2019. So we were at 322, right? So we can do it again. So we do 322 divided by 347. And so that's 93%. So we could say prices are up 7% this year, right? I mean, it doesn't, it just has to be something simple that they can get their head around. So how's the market? Well, prices have risen. The median prices in Salt Lake is up 7% this year, comma, why do you ask? So, because remember, sales is nothing more than a series of questions that leads people to a decision. And the way you check to see if you're selling is the quote is, and it's not to be graded on its English, proper English, it's selling ain't selling. So telling ain't selling. So if you're telling people things, you're not in sales. Remember, we're in direct sales marketing. So what you need to be talking to people, you need to be asking questions. Now, when someone asks you a question, that doesn't mean you don't answer it. You have to answer it and use the common question. That's what I call common question. So you always answer their question, answer it with intelligence, but also short as possible. Don't go into a whole litany where then they start questioning you and you don't know the full answer. Then you don't sound intelligent anymore. So no matter what someone says to you, you always want to answer it and then take control back. Because remember, whoever's asking questions is in control of the conversation. I'll give you an example. A buyer calls or a person calls on a sign call. Hey, I want to know about that property. Okay, what do you want to know? How much is it? $350. How many bedrooms? How many baths? 3. How big is, what's the lot size? 0.23. So who's in control of that conversation? The person on the other end of the phone. So I use a technique when I'm getting a sign call called load the answer and then go after, and then comma, new question. So someone says to me, tell me about that property. I go, oh, yeah. And I always put the price in the middle. I go, oh, yeah, that's a new listing. That one's a 4-bedroom, 3-bath, sits on a .22 lot, refinished. It's got a new kitchen. Price of that's $350. The bathrooms have been updated, they're painted, carpeted. The basement's finished. And new landscape, and it's an awesome house. Does that sound like something that could work for you? Right. So in other words, I already know what questions they're going to ask. How much, how many bedrooms, how many baths, square footage, lot, that kind of stuff. So I already know those questions. So when someone calls you on a property, know those answers, load them, and it's important to put the price in the middle. Because if you say it's $350, you don't want to come off with this tone of, can you afford that? Because if they can't, you've kind of like shot them a little bit. You've embarrassed them somewhat, if you will. So you always want to put the price in the middle so that and then give them a lot of answers and then comma, does that sound like something that could work for you? And they'll say something like, oh, no, it's too big. Oh, okay, too big. What does too big really mean? It really means it's too much money, right? Rarely does somebody say, well, I don't want to, that can afford the house, say this house is too big, I don't want to buy it. Now, it's a possibility, but it's rare. So I hope that makes sense, right? So you want to be able to answer their questions and then ask them a question and take control of the conversation back. So does that make sense?
That makes sense.
I know I just went on a rant for about 8 minutes. So with Park City, I don't know their MLS. You're just going to have to look it up. But I always recommend going to any meeting where they're going to talk about the conditions of the market, because that's what makes you sound like an expert, right? So what separates us, and you'll hear them talk about it a lot, like you hear Rocket Mortgage, right? They're, push button, get mortgage. Well, that sounds wonderful, okay? But the truth is that, it's not that simple, right? Push button, get mortgage will only work when you have somebody that has, 760 FICO score, no debt, 20% down payment, right? Been at their job 10 years, and things like that, right? But, come on, who are they, right? That's like, you look up fiction in the dictionary, and that's got a picture of that guy. So the key, though, is, being an expert in your field. So when someone says, hey, I want this kind of mortgage, and then an expert will say, no, this mortgage may be better for you, and let me explain why, based on their particular circumstances. So let's say a guy's here to work on a hotel project. They're going to build a high-rise. It's a 3-year project. Well, the guy's the project manager. He wants to buy a house, but he's only going to be here 3 years. So why wouldn't you get, a 5-1 adjustable, right? Adjustable arm. Well, you're not going to get that kind of information on push button. Well, the same thing is with real estate. If you're not intelligent about your field, and if you're not an expert where you can give advice, then you will be replaced by push button, right? Someone says to me, I had a client one time, they called me out, they said, we want to sell this property. It was a rental property. And what had happened is they had a bad experience with a tenant, and they just wanted to get rid of the property. And I went out and I did the comps and all that kind of stuff. I looked at the house and I said, no, you're better off keeping this property. I talked him out of selling it. And what he said to me, he says, Rob, when someone who makes their money or someone that gets paid at the closing of a transaction tells me I shouldn't sell it, that's probably great advice. But that client stuck with me through thick and thin. I've gotten all their business, family and everything. So with that said, because I was an expert in my field and I told them a better option, even at the expense of me making money, they've stuck with me and they treated me as the expert. And that's what you need to be. And that's so that answers your question, Vonda, right? So should you go?
Yes. Thank you.
Absolutely, right? You want to always be intelligent. So the question was, Amy, Vonda asked was, Park City Board is having a quarterly stats meeting. Should you go? And so, so I just spent 15 minutes answering yes. So
that's okay.
Right. But the teacher in me always wants to explain why.
It's good to hear again.
Just, what's that?
I said it's good to hear again.
Yep. You can never. Yeah. I mean, I don't come up with new stuff every day. We're just teaching the same thing all the time, maybe slightly different camera angle at certain points. But promise me, when someone asks you, how's the market, you're not going to give them one of those silly descriptive, subjective answers. Because hot is hot for a seller, but not for a buyer. Terrible for a buyer. And remember, there's no such thing as a good market, a bad market. There's just a buyer's market and a seller's market. Remember that, right? It's good to what? Sell. It's tough to be a buyer's agent, especially in the lower prices. It's also tough to be a listing agent in this price range. I mean, in this cycle of the market, because there's so much competition that you're going to get beat up on your commission. So you have to decide which is better. I'd rather take a commission at a listing at 2% listing side, and take it at 5%, give away 3, keep 2, than to run around with a $285,000 buyer. That's even worse.
Agreed.
Right. In the Salt Lake market, where you may make a little more. You're going to make 2.5 to 3%, but you're going to work 10 times as hard. So it's better to actually be a listing agent in a seller's market. And sometimes it's still better to be a listing agent in a buyer's market. However, a good buyer in a buyer's market is gold. They're gold. You could take them out, on one Saturday morning, meet them at 8 o'clock, look at a boatload of houses. And what I always did was take them back and look at their 2 most favorite ones so I can clear the clutter out of their mind, let them look at the 2 they like the most, and then ask them to decide which one they want to make an offer on. So you can meet them up at 8 a.m., be writing an offer at noon. And in a buyer's market, you'll get it accepted by 1. Today, they made an offer, it's 2-3 days, regardless of what the time of acceptance was, because the listing agent's in control. So, excuse me, and that's just the way it is. So any thoughts, questions, concerns, hallucinations?
No,
so that
right.
would be
I like the
silence is deafening. I'm sorry, say that again, Vonda?
I like hallucinations.
Yeah, we all have those, right?
Right.
So, but you know what? Your subconscious doesn't know the difference between reality and what you visualize in your mind. So do you know that? So you should visualize in your mind every time, calling people up and setting appointments. you should visualize that every time the phone rings, so when you're prospecting and every time you hear a phone ring, diddle-a-ling in your ear, you should run through the script in your head. All we need to do now is simply set an appointment. That way I can help you get what you want, the time you want. That'd be great. And they go, yeah, Monday or Tuesday 4, and they say Tuesday. You should hear that. So because if you run that tape in your head every time you hear the phone ring, because how many times do you hear the phone ringing? If you talk to 10 people, that probably means you called 40, 30 didn't answer. And so 3 rings times 30, that's 90 no answers. So in your mind, if you set an appointment 90 times, then you talk to 10 and didn't set any, but your ratio is now 90 appointments set to 10 not set. So that will help you feel good about making calls. The reason why we don't let people get calls, it is brutal to be rejected, 99% of the times. So with that technique I just described, you won't be rejected 99% of the times. In fact, you'll be only rejected 10% of the times. So, make sense?
Makes sense.
So, you just have to use your brain, your mind. We have one of the most awesome things ever created in the history of creation is our mind, the ability to think. We can outsmart our brain. Hello? Real faint. Are you talking to us?
No. Sorry.
Oh.
I clicked wrong on my computer.
Got it. So anyway, that's all I got, unless you guys have any questions. If not, then I'll go ahead and end the call. And you guys have an amazing day. And if there's anything I could do to be of service to help you grow your business, call me. Okay?
Thank you, Rob. Appreciate it.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.